Boo!
Boo!
Welcome to Okanagan Legends and Hauntings, your podcast for all things spooky and unexplainable in the region. Did I scare you, Georgia?
I was spooked. I'm so freaked out right now.
Yeah, that was my plan.
And like, just to be honest, it's a couple days after Halloween, so
Yeah,
it's very spooky out right
peek
now.
behind the curtain. Yes, we're recording just after Halloween.
Just after Halloween.
So I think this is a lot of fun to record a spooky podcast during spooky season.
We're like really in spook mode right now, so
yes.
I'm excited to hear what we're going to talk about today.
I'm excited to talk about it.
Heck yeah.
So, to preface, I've said this in episodes before, and I'll say it again. We love paranormal content.
Love it.
Some of our favorite days are just like, pulling the blinds closed, cozying up, and watching one of our favorite paranormal YouTubers.
Also love paranormal podcasts.
Yeah.
As well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, any kind of like, we like it all.
Yeah.
It's all fun.
Yeah, we do, which is why we're here today.
Yeah.
But, I would say the bulk of that content that we take in is American.
It is.
Like, for example, I'm thinking of, like, the Annabelle doll.
Yeah, Annabelle, Sally House.
Mm-hmm.
Or the Villisca Axe Murder House.
Mm-hmm. The Queen Mary, California. The Amityville Horror, which was in New York. Mm-hmm. All sorts of these things. So all this content that we take in is largely American. Mm-hmm. And I would say the type of building that we see investigated the most are sanatoriums.
Yeah.
So as a blanket statement, there's not a lot of coverage on Canadian hauntings.
No.
And I would say even less about haunted Canadian sanatoriums.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our topic of today, which is the Tranquille Sanatorium in Kamloops.
Ooh.
So I need to preface, I know that Kamloops is not technically in the Okanagan, and we are on Okanagan Legends and Hauntings, but it is in the greater Thompson-Okanagan region. So I'm going to talk about it because it's my podcast, and I want to talk about it, and I make the rules.
Heck yeah.
So there.
All right. Well, hey, I respect that.
Great.
And I love it.
So I'm going to pull out my package for today.
Okay.
So firstly, I want to define for us what is a sanatorium, because that's kind of a strange word that doesn't come up in regular convo.
Yeah.
So per the Merriam-Webster definition, it is an establishment or facility offering usually long-term medical care or treatment, such as an establishment that provides therapy, typically involving specific regimens, such as a special diet, fresh air, or daily exercise for treatment or rehabilitation. A facility treating individuals with mental or emotional disorders, or an institution for rest and recuperation.
That surprises me.
Do tell.
I think, like, and I think I'm swayed by what we've seen in, like, paranormal things about sanatoriums, where it's just, like, they did experiments on people.
Yeah.
So, like, that sounds very lovely. And when I think about, like, what we think of when we think, ooh, a sanatorium, it feels like very creepy and like, oh, like bad.
Right. So you're referencing a lot of sanatoriums that have had so many
bad things happen.
Yeah.
Whereas
bad stories.
Yeah, this feels very like, oh, like we're here to like help. It's very fresh air, like special diets.
Yeah, at face value, it sounds very
nice.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that at all these sanatoriums throughout the world, that it always started with
good intentions. Yeah.
The Tranquille Sanatorium in Kamloops. I was so excited to research about this that I had Georgia drive me to Kamloops from Kelowna.
Yeah.
So I could visit the Kamloops Museum and Archives. just so I could go diving through their archival material and see what I could learn about the location, because the location is not open to the public, unfortunately.
We did email to try get a tour or just to take some video, and they did decline, but that's all good. I don't want people to see this and then think, oh, it's really cool, like, let's go there. Please do not trespass. Do not go on their property. It's close. It's private property. It's very cool. I agree. I would have loved to have gone and seen it, but, like, please don't trespass on other people's properties, even though it's an interesting part of history.
Yeah, that's not your place.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Going to the Kamloops archive was my first time at an archive, and I was really blown away by what an awesome resource it is. I mean, maybe it sounds so stupid, but just for someone who's never engaged with that before, it was really awesome. The archivist was really helpful in pointing me in the right directions of different sources of information, how to go through their photography archive and track down the numbers for the things that I wanted to see that they had to go retrieve from the back room. It was such a cool experience. And I just really want to shout out museums. Like, go to your local museum, go to your archive. Like, if you're curious about anything in your region, I think people are sleeping on archives.
Yeah.
Like, you got to go check it out. It was so awesome to be able to, get hands-on with things from the location that we're discussing today.
Yeah. We said this in the Ogopogo episode as well, where it's like, hey, like, if you're ever curious about anything, like, there are people who dedicate their time and their lives to, like, researching stuff and would love to chat to you about it. So don't feel shy. Go talk to some cool museum people.
So thank you to the Kamloops Museum and Archives for having us. And now let's get into the history of the Tranquille Sanatorium.
Neat.
To go into the history, the land was originally inhabited by a group of indigenous people. The chief of this group was named Chief Tranquille.
Oh, okay.
And that was often written as Chief Tranquille. So you can kind of see how that name stuck with the area.
Yeah.
Spelled differently than Tranquille Sanatorium. But anyway, that's where its roots are from.
Cool.
From an indigenous chief in the area.
Cool.
A few years after the death of Chief Tranquille in 1841, the land was settled by two families, the Fortunes and the Coonies. Actually, after we left the Kamloops Museum that day, when we were driving around, I noticed those names popping up. There was a place called Fortune Drive. There's a place called Cooney Bay.
Oh,
so
cool.
you can see how all these families and these people, like Chief Tranquille, the Coonies, the Fortunes, they really left their mark historically on Kamloops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I think it's neat when we kind of keep the names of the people who were here who started things.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, nice.
Never forget your roots.
Yeah.
And there's actually a lot of stories about these families and the land that they settled here and how the property eventually came to be a sanatorium, including there was a lawsuit about the eventual purchase of the property from the Fortunes. I won't get into that here, but there's a lot of drama surrounding the property. It would be a really fun bit of research if anyone wants to do a bit of a deeper dive. But there was some drama with the Fortunes and the other families in the area.
Yikes.
But that is a bit broader of a topic than we're going into today.
yeah, totally fair.
Yeah.
Look it up.
Yeah.
Do your research. Go to the archives and find out.
To discuss tuberculosis.
Yeah, yikes.
So tuberculosis was brought over to Canada by early European immigrants and also by a lot of soldiers returning home from World War I. At the time, there was no cure, and the best approach to treatment was a healthy diet, direct sunlight, and lots of fresh air.
I've seen in some of the like paranormal investigation videos that we've watched at sanatoriums, because you mentioned fresh air and stuff, that they actually had like sunrooms that they would like wheel patients out into so they could get like fresh air and sunlight. And I feel like that might be like the most peaceful little moment of having tuberculosis.
Kind of tranquil, wouldn't you say?
Tranquil.
Yeah, I don't know for sure if they had a sunroom at the sanatorium or at the property at all.
Yeah.
But there are photos of patients on their beds wheeled out outside, maybe
Oh,
on a
okay.
porch or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a method used to treat at the sanatorium here. And word spread all around BC, actually, that the Fortune Ranch had great climate for this, exposure to sunlight and fresh air remedy for TB, as well as access to good quality, locally grown food. So people all across the province who are experiencing health problems with tuberculosis, and I think other things as well, they would actually come to board at the Fortune Ranch. The Fortunes would open up just beds and rooms to people who wanted to come and focus on their health and their recovery. So this property began to be used as like an unofficial medical retreat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't always a sanatorium. It was like more just like a property.
Yeah, even before it officially became a sanatorium, it was kind of being used for that purpose in like an unofficial way. So
Right,
like no
okay.
nurses or anything, but
Yeah.
people would come out. The Fortunes would kind of like take rent or whatever from them.
Right.
And yeah, so long-standing history of this, I don't know, holistic approach to health
Yeah,
at
yeah.
the Fortune Ranch.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Eventually, in 1906, the Fortune Ranch was purchased for $60,000 by the Anti-Tuberculosis Society of British Columbia.
Whoa.
And it then opened as the King Edward VII Sanatorium, or the King Edward Memorial Sanatorium.
Whoa.
So, Tranquille was not its first name. But yeah,
King Edward James? What?
King Edward VII.
King Edward VII.
And this was actually the first tuberculosis sanatorium in Western Canada.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Dang.
The first sanatorium opened in Ontario in, I believe, 1897.
Dang.
So there was a large portion of the country that was not served for tuberculosis treatment. So this was like a pretty big deal to have open out
Yeah.
here.
Because, like, what a long way to go to try
Yeah.
get treatment.
Yeah, I'm not sure if people would have traveled out to Ontario
Probably-
to seek treatment.
Probably
or,
not if you had TB.
No, you'd probably just kind of do your best.
Yeah.
Where you are.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah, that's hard.
So with the sanatorium open, it operated for several years out of the old Fortune homestead and some shacks. But the need grew. Like there was lots of people coming out to Kamloops for treatment. So another building, the main building, was built in 1910. And then, as I discussed before, like as time passed, World War I came to an end. All these soldiers were coming back from Europe and had brought tuberculosis along with them, unfortunately.
Yikes.
The space was really necessary.
Yeah.
They needed a lot of different beds. They needed a lot of different wards to serve all of these people.
Yeah.
So, as you can imagine, running an operation of this size with this many moving parts of needing a healthy diet supplied to them daily,
Yeah.
taken outside for fresh air and exposure to the sunlight, the sanatorium was running into some financial issues.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to run something of that scale.
Lots of staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need a lot of staff. The amount that they would have to spend on like food. And even just getting people out there
Yeah.
was quite difficult. For a long time, it was only accessible, I believe, by boat. It's right along the Tranquille River. I think around 1915, when the Canadian Pacific Railway was built, things got a bit easier to get both patients out there and supplies. So that's helpful. But the Anti-Tuberculosis Society was definitely running into some financial strain trying to make it all happen.
Yeah.
So, in order to keep the services running and alleviate the stress off of the Anti-TB Society, the provincial government actually took over the operation of the sanatorium. And they then renamed it the Tranquille Sanatorium in 1921.
Oh, cool.
So that is what most people will know it by now, rather than the King Edward's Sanatorium or other names for subsequent uses, which we'll get into later. So in order to keep up with the need for more beds for more and more patients, the neighboring Cooney Ranch. You'll remember the Coonies from before.
From the beginning.
Yeah.
Were you listening?
Yeah.
Good.
It all came back around.
Full circle.
Yeah. So their ranch was purchased in 1923, and more buildings were constructed on the property. And if you've ever seen like drone footage of the property or like a satellite image, there are a lot of buildings there, even to this day. There was a community built around it. There was even a newspaper that was just for the Tranquille area that was largely for, giving the patients something to read, but, stories about everyone in the community.
Yeah.
They really did try to, make it feel homely, I think.
Yeah, totally.
As much as you could.
I think that's important too when you're not feeling very good. It's important to have somewhere that kind of feels like home so you can actually relax and allow your body to sort of heal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They had men's wards, women's wards, children's wards. So they served all types of people, had a community grown around it. And at its height, Tranquille had space for about 360 patients. I feel like that number doesn't feel very impressive.
I was about to say that doesn't feel like a lot of people.
But I think if you think about the types of care that these people needed, having 360 people who all needed a nurse, that is a lot to handle.
It's a lot to handle. People carting outside, chefs cooking all the food, electricity, heating, and beds, blankets. That's a lot of. It's a lot of stuff. I think we're just so used to, hospitals taking like a lot of people.
I know, in kind of a 21st century mindset, we're thinking like everyone's going to be crammed in super close, people out in the hallways, because that's like our hospital experience right now.
Yeah.
But so 360 patients.
I guess it kind of makes sense because it's a lower number for us today, but if you think about it back then, like people had to really take a journey to get out there, like it takes time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
In general, lower population numbers as well.
Definitely.
So now for some good news. Antibiotics were invented, which were
medicine and science.
Yes, so that was the cure for TB.
Heck yeah.
We now know that a course of antibiotics can treat and cure TB. And these medications became more widely available in the 1940s. So, yay. Obviously, the need for sanatoriums and this type of treatment for TB became less and less until eventually in 1958, Tranquille Sanatorium closed.
Wow.
Yeah.
1978.
1958.
1958. That's quite a short time.
Yeah, so it originally opened 1906, 1907.
Yeah.
And then closed in 1958. So, 50 years of operation.
Yeah.
Commendable.
Yeah, definitely.
However, the building did not sit empty for long. Rather, it was transferred to the Department of Mental Health Services, where a year later it reopened as a home for people with mental disabilities.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
So actually, I think this is what a lot of people from the area know it more for.
Right. Okay.
Know the Tranquille property for, because it operated in that capacity more recently.
I feel like maybe some people don't quite realize that it was a tuberculosis place because it was more well known for being like a mental health institution. So I wonder actually like what percent of the population of Kamloops might watch this and then be like, I didn't even know that they did helped for TB.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm interested. I would be interested to know and like how many people actually know.
Yeah. Me too, actually. Because I didn't know about this property until a few years ago, I think.
Yeah. So. I've secretly known about this property and
Oh, yeah.
have wanted to go to this property, but I've never done research on it. So
Mhm.
I just knew that it was like a sanatorium,
Mhm.
and I thought it looked cool in pictures.
Yeah.
So
It continued to operate in this capacity for several decades, actually, and it continued to grow, and more
Yeah.
buildings were built. These buildings were to house both clients and staff. So people lived on site.
Oh,
Like I
okay.
said, there was a whole community built
Right,
around
yeah.
it. There were efforts to make it feel more like homey and less institutional,
Yeah.
because moving it from more of a hospital capacity to like a residential programming definitely would feel a bit stark, doing
Yeah.
that in a kind of a hospital vibe. So
Yeah.
they did try to make things feel more, help people feel at home.
Yeah, and I know like a lot of people feel very uneasy in hospitals because they are so like clean and like
Yes.
everything's white, and I don't know, you feel like you can't really touch anything. So it'd be hard to like live there 24/7 if it felt so like clinical.
Yeah, so I think some of these newer living quarters were less hospital vibes.
Yeah.
However, unfortunately, there were accounts of maltreatment, such as forcing clients to work without pay, not being able to open their mail, not being able to accept gifts that visitors bring them. So just kind of like some nasty business going on there sometimes.
Right.
So not always just a nice, happy place to,
Yeah.
get a bit of help.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I feel like most places open with good intentions, but I don't know why this happens, but it always ends off with like maltreatment, and I think there's some sort of play with like being in a position of power over other people that just like gets people in a bad mindset. I think if people have too much power, it like can kind of play with your brain and turn you into someone that you might not be. But I don't know. I just like the person that I am. I'm like, it just like doesn't make sense to me that anybody would be like mistreated in a hospital setting. So it just kind of like, I don't know, it hurts.
Yeah, it's horrible to hear. And I think those types of things create a negative energy that can
definitely.
linger
Yeah.
in places and in things, which maybe we'll get into a bit later once we go into the haunted accounts.
Yeah.
So the programs offered here focused on self-care and social skills so that people could eventually return to the communities they came from, sometimes in like a foster home or a boarding home setting.
Right, yeah.
So eventually the facility did close in 1983. So about 30 years of operation.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you were aware of Tranquille before.
Yeah.
Did you understand it to be a treatment center for TB or
No.
more for people with mental disabilities?
I just knew sanatorium. I didn't know for what.
Right.
Yeah. Because at that point, like we discussed earlier, like you don't really hear about sanatoriums here in Canada. So I was like, I don't really know what it was used for, but I knew it was a sanatorium.
Got it.
So, yeah, and I don't know. The buildings just looked cool.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to go there.
So a little curiosity was piqued.
Yeah, exactly. And I've always been fascinated with like old buildings, abandoned buildings. Just because I feel like it's so interesting. They were like a huge part of history, like especially ghost towns. And then, you just kind of leave them and it's like, oh, well, they're just still sitting there.
It's eerie.
It's eerie, but it's also like, I don't know, beautiful in a way because we've grown and like we've moved to other places and built families and, that sort of thing. But I don't know, old abandoned buildings and history have always been like a huge thing that I've been intrigued about. And I think when I moved to Kelowna, I was like, oh, abandoned buildings in the Okanagan. And like Kamloops isn't quite in the Okanagan, but it still popped up. And I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah, I would say it's actually a pretty...
it's pretty common.
If you're looking for this kind of topic, that Tranquille does pop up.
It pops up quite
frequently.
a bit. Yeah.
So today, the property where the sanatorium sits is not open to the public, as we mentioned before. There was a short time in the 90s where it actually operated as a juvenile detention center. In more recent years, it's operated as a farm and it's offered historical tours as well as like a spooky escape room kind of experience. And like, I'm so sad I missed out on that. I heard they were doing that and I thought it would be so cool to go do. Like, what an interesting idea to do an escape room in such an old building. But I always just kept thinking, oh, I'll do it next year. I'll do it next season. But then they didn't end up doing it for all that long. Like maybe a year or two. I'm making that up, but that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Like how, like, I wish I did it, you know?
Yeah.
So if this is a message to anything, it's just seize the day, I guess.
Yeah, seize the day.
Also recently, there have been a lot of talks of developing the property, both back in the 90s and currently, but the attempts at doing so have largely been abandoned or blocked for various reasons. But I do think it's only a matter of time before someone is successful and they are able to develop the property and tear down the old buildings, which I think is such a shame.
Yeah, I was just about to say, personally, I think that's a bummer. And hey, if you own an old building, please don't knock it down. Like, yes, I know it's super sick to like develop and like have some property and stuff, but like, do we need it? I don't think we do. And I think it's cooler to have a piece of history and an old building that maybe you fix up and you can do like tours, or I don't care. Just don't knock down old buildings. Let's restore stuff and like use the bones that are there. Yeah, because it's a part of us. It's a part of Canada, and it's just really depressing when we knock down old buildings. I know. They're so beautiful, and like, I don't know, they've got all of this rich history in them, and I just want to keep that.
Yeah, I really tried to play devil's advocate in my head and saying, oh, well, it would be a lot of work to like refurbish these buildings and, you know, get them to a state where you could safely tour people around and maybe have it done up to look how it would have looked back in the day. But then I also thought, you know, it's also a lot of work to tear everything down, get the land ready to be developed, and build whatever it is they want to build. Yeah. So, like, I would love to see Tranquille revived into a museum where you could go and do tours and learn about the history. Yeah, they could do haunted tours.
Escape rooms, bring back the escape room. I want to go. And like, I don't know. It's just like so fascinating. Like it's hard work either way, so why not just like bring some life back into these old buildings and share their stories and allow people to come and experience. And even if it's like hard history, there's definitely places in Canada that has hard history, but I think it's important that we don't shove those under the rug or knock them down, or, you know, it's important to like go to these places and like feel the feels and
absolutely like to
touch the walls.
Yeah, like to understand that portion of 20th century history in Canada. The tuberculosis epidemic was, you know, a big chunk. Like so many people lost a lot of loved ones to that disease, and people suffered with TB for years. And it was considered almost shameful. Like you didn't really want to share that you had a family member who had TB because it was so contagious. Yeah. So I heard stories of people essentially faking their death or saying, oh, so-and-so died like on this voyage or this way. But they actually went and passed away at Tranquille like 10 years later.
Oh, man.
Like it was such a sad time. And I'm so glad that antibiotics have been discovered for its treatment. So it feels like such a shame to potentially lose that
piece of history.
Yeah, that property where it's such a big part of, you know, Western Canadian medicine. Yeah. So, I mean, what a testament to where we've come.
Yeah, definitely.
How far we've come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So now hard cut segue to the haunted accounts.
Boo.
Boo. Again.
Did
we get you?
Are you scared?
So we've alluded to this already, but people say Tranquille is haunted.
Yeah. That's also one of the reasons why I was so interested in it. Like a couple of years ago, is I was kind of looking up like haunted places in Okanagan because I was sort of getting into paranormal stuff, and it popped up, and I was like, oh, yeah, it's haunted.
But you didn't do too much research
No.
into it. No. Okay, so here I'm going to tell you a few things.
And I'm excited.
So I could definitely see why people would say this place is haunted, even without knowing any of the accounts yet, because of all the death and hardships that took place here. First and foremost, I have to assume that there were indigenous deaths on this land as they were first inhabited by these people. So any kind of like death in the area is going to, associate a negative energy to it. And I have to be frank, I didn't do a ton of research onto that part of the history there. But if it's anything like other stories of European settlers coming into areas where indigenous people were living, it probably was not a good time for the indigenous folks there.
Yeah.
That is one thing I just want to bring up first and foremost.
Yeah.
Next, of course, there were all the patients who succumbed to tuberculosis here. There isn't a record of any burials taking place on the property, so it's not to say that there are like bodies there that have associated maybe a spirit with the space.
Right.
As most bodies were actually returned to their families once someone passed away. If it was a situation where he didn't have a next of kin and they were just sent there for care, the body was mostly returned to the municipality that was actually paying their fees for attending at Tranquille.
Okay.
And actually the buildings are all interconnected by tunnels underground, which were often used as like temporary places to store bodies before they were sent home.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty common thing in
that's
sanatoriums to have like a
normal.
tunnel system for transportation. So while there's no record of any burials at the site, there was a recorded suicide while it was operating as the tuberculosis hospital. Like I said, TB is a brutal disease, can wreak havoc on your body for years.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, there was a patient, a man with TB, who over time would collect strings from different staff or visitors, and eventually he wove these strings into a rope and he hung himself. That was in April 1923.
Yeah, that's hard.
That's like a really awful association with the property as well.
Yeah.
So, what are the types of haunted experiences people have had here?
Can I guess?
Okay, guess.
I think this might be fun.
Okay.
Okay, types of experiences. Are you talking like voices, apparitions, like that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say disembodied voices.
Okay.
Shadows?
Shadows?
I don't know. Shadows moving in the distance.
Okay.
I think that's all I have.
Did you read my script?
I didn't.
Well, those definitely come up.
Okay.
So
I missed some.
So people have heard lots of disembodied voices. So that being a voice seeming to come from nowhere and from no one. Lots of like moaning and groaning type sounds that people hear. People also report seeing orbs.
Oh.
Which is like a paranormal phenomenon.
And is widely debated.
Yeah, because it often appears on photos and videos.
Yeah.
That some people say represent like a spiritual entity.
Yeah. And others say dust.
Yeah. What's your take as photographer, videographer on
Oh
orbs?
my gosh. Dust is everywhere, especially old buildings. So it's really hard to say that, I don't know, me personally, it's hard to solidify that orb, yes, spirit. But, like, it shows up quite a bit, especially in flash photography. Like, you see a lot of dust. Video, a little bit less, but if it's, like, night vision, like using an IR light, you'll see a lot more of it. I think it is convincing, though, when you see an orb move towards something and then something goes off. Like we watched an episode of something the other day where orb went down and like touched a bell and then the bell went off. Like that's a little bit more convincing, but for me, I'm like, it might just be dust.
So generally, I'm not going to convince you to believe anything by telling you that people have seen orbs.
No.
Okay, got it.
But that's just me. If you believe in orbs, all to you.
Got it. And people have also reported seeing full-bodied apparitions.
Dang it, I should have
wandering.
stuck with my apparitions.
No, well, you said it. I'll give you partial marks.
Thank you.
While Tranquille was operating as a home for the mentally disabled, there is a local rumor. I have to say this has not been confirmed. But there is a rumor that there was a nurse who was transporting a patient through the tunnels to a different ward.
Yeah.
And this patient became violent and attacked her.
Whoa.
And she was killed.
Whoa.
Yes. So, although not confirmed, that is a story that's stuck. And when people have gone through the tunnels doing investigations, they have heard screaming.
Whoa.
They have a feeling of being watched. And sometimes people have reported seeing like figures. Yeah.
Yeah. See, if I was in a spot and I heard screaming, goodbye.
Yeah.
I'm out of there. I'm running.
It's terrifying to think about.
I would scream myself.
Yeah, I'd be out of there.
Yeah. But also horrifying to think like last moments in a dark tunnel trying to help a patient just to be then killed by that patient. That's hard.
And then potentially this residual sound
Yeah.
of her screams
That's
sticking around.
hard. That's like gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really sad
Yeah.
story. May or may not be true.
Yeah. We don't know, but if it is, that's horrible.
There are also claims of a woman wandering the halls, which is typically associated with the story of a woman who brought her son to Tranquille, who had TB. And
The son had TB?
The son had TB, and eventually he passed away of the illness
that's
at
hard.
Tranquille. And the grief caused this mother to unfortunately lose her mind, and she was later admitted to Tranquille when it was a place for people with mental health issues.
That's hard.
So she stayed at the facility until she passed away, and people now say they see a woman in 1950s kind of style garb wandering around, sometimes seen like face in hands crying.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, really sad.
Specifically in the children's ward, people have heard the sound of children's voices, laughing, playing, and toys being moved from location to location inexplicably.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of a common haunting is,
Yeah.
the things moving and residual just voices.
That's actually kind of interesting because when we think of adult spirits, they're usually moaning, groaning, crying, screaming, and then to hear that the children's spirits that are still there allegedly are giggling and playing and laughing, I think that's kind of nice.
Yeah, if a spirit is sticking around, I'd hope that they just be playing and laughing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So there are also accounts of a shadow figure.
Hey.
You guessed it.
I was like, dark energy, a shadow.
So people say that this shadow figure is humanoid, like human-like in nature, but no features that you can see, no face.
Right.
People say that this figure is seen peering around doorways, gliding across walls, or the freakiest iteration, in my opinion, standing up from the floor of a padded cell.
No.
Yeah, that's a big no from me.
No. Also, just to be totally transparent, we're facing sort of a window out to outside and it's really dark. So to be talking about these spooky things, I keep looking over there and I'm like, please don't let there be someone out there.
Someone peering around.
I get freaked out.
Yeah. Also, this is not really a haunted account, but if you've ever just seen the property, it looks
haunted.
It looks scary.
Like
It's dilapidated. It is run down. You do not want to be there at nighttime.
No, like I said, please don't go there because it's private property, but definitely look up pictures of it on online because yeah, it looks freaky.
It does look freaky.
Yeah, it looks really freaky.
So with so many horrible things happening here for so many years, it's really no wonder to me that energies could be lingering here and causing these haunts to occur.
Yeah, definitely.
Sanatoriums have so many haunted accounts, I think, just because of like the suffering and the misery of all these people who pass through.
Yeah.
It's just it makes sense to me that this place is haunted.
Yeah.
I haven't been there, but I think it could be haunted.
I think it could be haunted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you see the place, you will think that as well.
Yes, and that is Tranquille. That is a little bit of Thompson, Okanagan history.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for listening. I'm glad to share a little bit about my research. Well, thank you again for tuning into Okanagan Legends and Hauntings. Tune in next time for another spooky account of something in the region that we can't quite explain.
What is it? We won't find out.
You will.
I will.
You're teaching me next episode.
Ooh. Maybe you'll find out.
Okay.
Okay. Ooh, I feel like I'm disappearing.
What?
Do you feel that?
I'm starting to feel a little weird myself.